What does feminism mean to you?
Equality.
Yeah.
And I prefer that as a concept.
Yeah.
And that's why I have issues with the word, but not with the concept necessarily, because it seems biased. It's like you're still, it's like you're fighting a fight. But actually some of the strongest feminists I know are actually men, which is interesting.
Is there one sort of a particularly memorable shoot, or for that matter, a disastrous one which you can laugh about today too? But is there one that,
That was disastrous, or that was memorable?
No,
both.
either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite a few that were. I mean, I got to work with such great photographers.
Who's your favourite? Or you don't want to say? You don't want to pick one
I don't
out.
really have a favourite.
Yeah.
Like my go-to now would probably be Jürgen Teller, because I've become good friends with him, and I love his aesthetic. I think it's so interesting and unusual and unique, and also the experience of shooting with him is really easy. Like it just feels like going on holiday almost. It's just like casual and funny. But at the same time, I've worked with so many other, like Nick Knight, Stephen Meisel, Irving Penn, Tim Walker, Miles. I've worked with. Tim
Walker's an interesting one, actually, isn't he?
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, in terms
and he's done some really awesome shoots with me.
They're very elaborate.
Yeah.
And it's very staged, and it's actually very theatrical.
Yeah. And I don't think I ever realised how iconic those pictures are until now. And I look back and I'm like, wow, that's such a cool image,
And do you see like, oh my God, that's me in there?
Yeah, I do see that it's me, but I also just see that it's such a cool image. Like regardless of me, I realised I was part of an image that's so strong by itself.
Your Cambridge degree is always mentioned, as in she's a model with a degree from Cambridge. As if it's surprising that a model could be bright. What do you think about those stereotypes of models? Like,
I do see why people are surprised, but I don't think it's because I'm a model. I think because of that stereotype, or I don't give any credit to that analysis of it. I think where I would give credit is the fact that I studied when I didn't have to. Or like what like it didn't make.
You could have been making millions, and there you were.
I could have been making 11.5 million pounds. Yeah.
We need a degree.
but instead, and that bit I do think is interesting and worth people like paying attention to, because I'm definitely obviously not the only person who does that. There are lots of people who do a degree or do, whether it's at that age or later on in life, for non-monetary, non-CV, non-obvious reasons. And I think that's wonderful and very valuable, because it points to education as being something that is of value in and of itself, not as a means to an end. But in terms of the model stereotype, well, I don't know. It really doesn't bother me. I find it quite funny. Having worked with many models, obviously, I actually think that they're one of the only jobs where they haven't asked to do it. Like they haven't chosen that path, where most jobs, you get a kind of common interest because people were all interested in journalism, or they were all interested in film, or they're all interested in whatever. Whereas models are chosen by the industry. So they get this a brand new random assortment of people whose only common feature is that they're tall and they have a particular way of looking. And so it's quite it's a very eclectic group of people. Yeah.
I actually hadn't thought about that. You do get chosen. It's true. I hadn't.
So it's actually probably one of the hardest industries to stereotype. I mean, maybe you could stereotype the effect of modelling on people. Yeah. But who they are as human beings as they come into it.
It's completely independent.
Completely random group of people. Yeah.
But I don't think it's all luck. I mean, you look at somebody like Giselle, and I remember talking to her agent, and she said that girl came in as a young girl and said, "I'm gonna make it to the top." It's not all luck. There's a lot of hard work and decisions that are made in terms of steering.
No. There's definitely
I think it's important.
Definitely, personality comes into it, 100%. And you'll find that most successful models have got quite interesting personalities, and they've really people want to work with them again. That comes down to that. It's like they develop relationships in the industry based on being hardworking or being funny or being interesting, and that plays into it. Being able also to play with the camera, that is a skill and a discipline that people have to learn.
Being pretty's not enough.
But at the same time, there is a lot that's out of your control in terms of whether your look is in or not, you know.
How do you manage to fit a love life in with such a busy workload?
I don't know. I do.
What you do?
I don't want to talk about it
Okay.
though. I never do.
You never do.
I never talk about it.
I know you don't, because every time you're seen in public, it makes headlines. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, years ago when you were seen out with Jude Law, how do you cope with that? How do you cope with your private life being so public in that respect?
I don't love it, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Wish people would mind their own business sometimes. But I get that that's the culture we live in, and that's the price I'm paying for reaping the benefits that I reap, you know, by having a public profile. I find it peculiar that that developed, you know, that public kind of profile as such, because that was never my intention, and is not always a natural consequence of modelling. You know, there are many models who have much more, don't have that kind of interest in their lives. And so I don't know why and how that develops, but it did, and it's something that rather than fight, which I did consider fighting for a while, I just decided to make peace with, because on the flip side, I get to like talk about things I care about and hopefully call attention to
let's talk about
projects.
something that you really care about, which is your social network project, impossible.com.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the readers in a nutshell how it works?
So it's a social network, and it's trying to encourage a culture of giving and receiving. And so people can post offers of things that they either want help with or that they want to offer the community, and then you can see other people's posts based on location. You can see your friends' posts, you can follow people, and then you can also search through like hashtags. So I might look up like hashtag yoga and see who's either offering or asking for things related to yoga.
What are some of the examples of things that people are posting? You know, the wishes. What are the wishes?
Like really wide mix. So there's skills-based stuff, which is largely the point of it. So language learning, or can someone read lines for me because I've got an audition? Can someone help me weed my garden? Can someone help me with computer issues I'm having? A lot of those kind of skills, services-based stuff. A lot of advice, actually. People who've got like emotional issues or intellectual questions that are seeking advice through the network.
How did you come up with this idea?
I was travelling with a friend in my last year of Cambridge, and we were having a conversation on the plane, and it literally just like came out of that conversation in quite a memorable moment. We were talking about the economy and why is it was just after the recession that when the economy kind of falters, that society immediately falls apart, because if you think about it, we all have the exact same amount of like skills and services and resources. We've just lost the language or the structure we use to move them. And isn't it a little bit concerning that we're so dependent on this one structure we've created, i.e. like the contemporary economic system, that we live or die based on it? And wouldn't it be healthier if there were like a few other ways we might like communicate our needs with one another? And that stumbled into what if there was a website or a technical platform that tried to do that.
There were quite a few obstacles in the beginning, weren't there?
Still obstacles, yeah.
Well, how do you get past
just changed.
them? How do we get past them? How do you know, what's the turning point? I mean, you've got great heavyweights involved. Professor Muhammad Yunus, is that how you pronounce? Yeah. And you know, Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia. Can't not mention it. You know, Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter, who once dated. Talk about a brain's trust when it comes to starting a social network. That's incredible. Lucky, very lucky. So what are the key lessons that you've learnt from these people that you could share?
I know I'm in a fortunate position in some ways, but I don't think it's got anything to do with that whatsoever. I really genuinely believe that when you put your heart and your mind to something, and this is true of anybody, you can really achieve like huge amounts, like so much more than you might have hoped or anticipated. And with, you know, I think I've experienced that several times in my life with different projects or different initiatives I've tried to do that seem so challenging at the time, and yet I've really like had to believe it's going to work out and had to really like invest myself into the process, and it again and again does. And with the example of impossible, like, you know, I came out of university and it's had this idea which seemed simple and obvious, but I had absolutely no idea how to put that into reality and who was going to help me. And I didn't even hardly use technology, like I didn't really use social networks or anything, let alone know how to make one or design one or find the resource or the money or the people to get that off the ground. And I just really went for it and failed twice. So built it first with an individual, and that was a bit of a nightmare, and then built it with an agency afterwards, and that also was really challenging because the concept wasn't really worked out enough, and I was paying them, and so that was stressful because then it was expensive, but at the same time they weren't producing anything that we could use. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try one more time, and that, like, I'll give it a third time and then I'm going to give up, because I really believed in the integrity of the idea. And then met the person who's become the kind of the lead developer, like kind of overseeing the technical side of it since. And that was a huge breakthrough.
What sort of pressures did modelling put on you? You know, did you have any of, you know, and were there things in the industry that you kind of looked and thought, oh, really don't like this?
You know, you have to be thin. But that's an obvious one.
Yeah, but you know, there's a difference between being, I talk about it all the time, you know, that a working model and someone who has longevity has a particular, that thinness is not through dieting, it is through genetics.
They do, I don't know, a mixture. I don't think, actually you see I see more eating disorder problems in schools than I did in modelling, and found that most models were incredibly healthy. Like,
which proves my point, because you need to be.
Yeah, so they're incredibly healthy. But at the same time, you know, you are, that group of people is being asked to be thin, you know, and I think that, you know, definitely was like on my mind and played with my mind, and I know other people's it did too. Even if I applied that very healthily, you are conscious of the fact that you're being scrutinised physically, you know, and so you have to fit a certain physical archetype. Which for some comes so easily because it is just genetics, and for some less easily. So I think there's a kind of a mix there. But that I think can be challenging. The fact that you're just being, as we just said before, scrutinised on your looks, and it's largely out of your control whether you're going to do well that year or not do well that year, and the vulnerability of being self-employed.
Do you believe in destiny, actually?
A little bit, yeah. And I think we make it, so I don't think it's absolute. Yeah. I think it's up to us to make it, and we can actually, we have a huge amount of power, I think, to change at any given moment. But I also think that, I don't know, I kind of feel like you kind of co-create like life. It's a combination of like you dictating what you want to do and believing in it and pushing it, and then life also saying to you, well, now you go right, or here's a doorway onto the left, you know.
If you could choose to play anything, what would your dream role be?
I'm about to play Helen of Troy, which I think will be interesting. I don't have one, it's kind of like Utopias, I don't have one fixed one. It's each experience is, the value is in the different experiences, you know. So as soon as I've experienced one character, I like to experience something different and explore.
Well, you're about challenging yourself, you're about finding new experiences.
It's like uncharted territory, so. Where
to now? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Well, that's what goes back to the very beginning of our conversation, that hopefully I'll be totally surprised. You know, if life continues in the same trajectory it has so far, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah.
I didn't ask. Yeah, no. Look. I know he's.
I would love Impossible to be vibrant and real and successful and putting value into people's lives. Like, that would make me really happy. And then I would love for myself creatively to be, I don't know whether it will be making more films or doing stuff that really feeds and allows me to grow as an artist, because I don't think I've really nurtured that enough yet.